Good evening and welcome to the Liberian Diaspora Forum Talk Show. This program airs every Sunday night with possible special editions during weekdays, depending on the guest schedule. Today is Sunday, March 4th, 2013, and the local time is 8 p.m. Central Minnesota time. Tonight, we have the privilege of hosting one of the best legal minds of Liberia, the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia, His Excellencies, Honorable Kabineh Jan-neh. Although this show has hosted many senior Liberian government officials in the past, including Senior Joel Howard Taylor of Bond County, Senator Thomas Groupie of Nimba County, Representative Donor of Nimba County, among others, it is however worth noting that our guest tonight, Councillor Jan-neh, is indeed the highest ranking official from the judicial branch of the Liberian government to appear on this show. As such, we ask that you be civil and respectful to our guests at all times, especially when asking questions about controversial issues of national concern. My name is Kafumba Kromah, and I will be your host tonight. With that said, let me turn the microphone over to our guest, the man we've all come to hear from, Councillor Jan-neh. Honorable Jan-neh, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me commence by thanking you for inviting me to participate at this forum and to discuss with my fellow compatriots some of the issues that are currently unfolding in our common patrimony, Liberia. I am particularly delighted to be here and to interact with all my fellow compatriots on this program, and hope that our interaction will be useful and entertaining for all of us. So thank you for inviting me, and I'm prepared now to proceed.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, are you done, Councillor?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right. Well, so in my introduction, I did not know that today the Councillor Jan-neh will be focusing on the rule of law in Liberia. That will be our central topic. Other questions can come. And so with that said, I have opened up your question line. We have the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia. And at any time, please dial *61. We have actually doubled our ways of asking questions tonight. Obviously, *61 is your first choice and perhaps the best one. And also, if for some reason you can't ask your question directly, you might want to test it to 612-203-3820. And if that doesn't work, by all means, you can also email your question to LiberianDiasporaForum@live.com. All of those questions will get to us, and we will get it over to Justice Jan-neh. So before I take the first question, I got questions coming in already. *61, keep dialing *61. Your questions will come forward. Before I start taking your question, let me start by asking our guest tonight, Councillor Jan-neh. Councillor, this notion that the Supreme Court is overreaching in Liberia. I was in Liberia recently, and a lot of people thought that there are too many cases rushing up straight to the Supreme Court without going to smaller court before the Supreme Court, considering that the Supreme Court is supposed to be the court of last resort. So how do you address yourself to that? Is that in fact correct?
Well, let me say partly that is correct. But the justice system in Liberia works this way. The Supreme Court has both original jurisdiction, which means that there are cases the Constitution of Liberia has authorized the Supreme Court to hear without such cases going before any lower court. Now, cases like those as stipulated in the Liberian Constitution involves those of dispute between counties, one between the Liberian government or a party involving an ambassador, just to give an example, an ambassador representing a different government. Other than those cases that are stipulated that the Supreme Court can hear without those matters coming from lower court, all other cases are to be heard first by lower courts and are brought up to the Supreme Court only for review. Now, in recent times, the Supreme Court has sort of extended, in certain cases, its powers to review or examine cases that border strictly on the Liberian Constitution. Maybe an interpretation of a constitutional provision, and there are cases where the court has said that such cases could come directly before the Supreme Court in what we call re-proceedings, for the court to be able to pass on them, given the national urgency. Now, our Constitution, however, gives everyone the right to appeal any matter, petty or major, up to the Supreme Court level. For example, if there's an aggravated assault between parties at the Magistrate court, any of the two parties dissatisfied can take up that matter, and it is likely, especially where it is this being a criminal case, the party that is defending that matter will have the right up to the Supreme Court for the court to be able to pass on the dispute as final arbiter. Because of these kinds of rights, cases have been just coming in a way, in a manner, and in a volume that has made the Supreme Court extremely overburdened. Now, what we have tried to do the last 6 years is to see how some of these cases now can be declassified, instead of making all of them such that they have to be indictable offenses. We want some of them to be classified as petty offenses, so as to give more authority to the lower court, especially the magistrate courts, where most of these cases originate, so that some of them can be handled without the necessity of having them come all the way to the Supreme Court. But that is still work in progress. Now, it has been suggested in some quarters that one of the things that could be done would be to create what we call middle level courts between the Circuit Court and the Supreme Court, so that these courts will be able to review cases only on the basis of some overriding interest, maybe based on constitutional interpretation, or the matter being such that the court would need to speak to the interpretation of a particular statutory provision, only in those cases that such cases could be appealed to the Supreme Court. But that again will require a review of certain provisions of the Liberian Constitution. So all we say is that much is being done, yet there is so much to be done in order to reduce the dockets, not only at the level of the Supreme Court, but at all levels of our courts. And I think that the current review of the Constitution, as you may know, the President recently set up a committee to re-look at some of the provisions of the Liberian Constitution. Our hope is that some of those issues that relate directly to the disposition of cases in our court scheme will be one of those critical matters that that committee will be able to look into in a very decisive way, especially so given the fact that the head of that committee is former Chief Justice of the Republic of Liberia.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, folks, we've just begun the questioning, and I got some of you lined up here. If you're just joining us, we say welcome to the Liberian Diaspora Forum Talk Show, weekly talk show, if I might add. Tonight we have Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia, Councillor Kabineh Jan-neh, and he's speaking on the rule of law in Liberia. So if you have any question, comment, or concern, by all means, please dial *61 on your phone. With that said, I'll go ahead and take our first caller here. No name. Your last 4 digits, 1881-1881. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and your question for Councillor Jan-neh. 1881.
Good evening. My name is Madiam Saleh from Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. Hi, Honorable Janet. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you for elaborating on some of the great job I hope that the Liberia justice system is trying to implement. However, my question has to do with does the magistrate court, which is considered at the very bottom of the Liberia judiciary system, has the authority to take away people's property rights? If yes, why? If no, what is being done about the judges who are orchestrating such unlawful activities? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sister. Firstly, we have 3 levels of our court system. One is the magistrate court, which is at the same level with the JP courts. Of course, the little difference about all of them, the 2 courts, they have powers under the law to deal with what we call petty matters. Now, any criminal case that will require indictment by a grand jury, no magisterial court or justice of the peace court has the authority to conduct trial in any of those cases. So in other words, the magisterial court, the JP courts, these are courts that are supposed to handle petty matters, assault, simple assault, disorderly conduct, those kinds of things. That is for the criminal part. On the civil part, you have small debt matters. Somebody owes another person small money. I think the maximum for magisterial court is under $2,000. In fact, it used to be around $500 or $300. It's been stapled and all that. But they cannot handle any big matter. Now, specifically on land issue, any land matter involving title. In other words, if you have a problem with a land issue, with a land matter, and that matter involves you having a title like a deed, and the other party also possessing a deed, the magisterial court, the way the system works, will not have the authority to sit and decide who the property belongs to. That matter must be taken to the next level, which is the circuit court. Now, if a magistrate court proceeds to look into a matter where 2 persons have presented deeds contesting the ownership of a property, then that magistrate court will be operating, or the magistrate presiding will be operating outside the law. Now, the second part of your question, what happens if the magistrate acts outside the law or acts in contravention of the rules of court? Generally, this matter must be reported to the judiciary. there's a committee we call Judicial Inquiry Commission. That commission is headed by an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia and is made up of judges and members of the Liberian National Bar Association. When that committee gets the complaint, they investigate the ethical transgression or violation on the part of the judge or the magistrate, and then appropriate actions are taken. Just the last time, just a month ago, the Supreme Court, acting on the basis of findings submitted by the Judicial Inquiry Commission against two judges, circuit judges, a magistrate, suspended those two judges for 6 months, and the magistrate was suspended for 2 months because what the court said was that his conduct was not of such magnitude, was not such contravention to attract more than 2 months of penalty. So basically, what the court has been doing is to instill discipline and inspire public confidence in the system. So whenever a judge acts outside the law, there are penalties, and those penalties are imposed largely by the Supreme Court. Magistrates who have acted in manner that were extremely outrageous, those magistrates have been removed from judicial services. And the last one I just talked about happened just a month ago before the Supreme Court closed. And we do not stop only with judges, even lawyers. For example, the last term, the same period when these disciplinary actions were taken against judges and magistrates, a lawyer of eminence in our jurisdiction who had been president of the Liberian National Bar Association was suspended by the Supreme Court from practice of law directly or indirectly for a period of 5 years. So actions are taken. Now, the difficulty we have as head of the judiciary is that oftentimes people who have legitimate complaints against magistrates, judges, justices of the Supreme Court, oftentimes don't summon the courage to file any complaint. And that makes our work difficult. But the long and short of what I want to say is that when actions are taken where complaints are filed before the court, before the Supreme Court, and they are investigated, and where transgressions are found, actions are taken.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. If you just joining us, and I noticed so many of you have just joined us, so we have the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia, Honorable Kabineh Jan-neh, is speaking on the topic, the rule of law in Liberia. So if you have any question, please dial *61, or you may text your question to 612-203-3820. I'll take the next caller. That happens to be Honorable D. Flomo of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Honorable Flomo, welcome to the Liberian Diaspora Forum.
Thank you for taking my call, Brother Kafumba. The Honorable Jan-neh, thank you for coming to the show. My name is D. Flomo. I'm the host of Liberian Destiny Debaters.org. And before I go to my question, I would like to give you an open invitation to appear on the Liberian Destiny Debaters.org. As I said, thank you. Honorable Jan-neh, thank you very much for coming on tonight. I have a few questions, but I will just give one for now. Liberia, we see that for 14 years, we did what we call, many of us call self-destruction. And up to this point, I just returned from Liberia. I see that there are talks, individuals that just group themselves and carry on things that are completely outside the law. And yet instead, we see the police at some point, I'm not sure whether we have anything on the book that actually that gives the police the power to address individuals who kind of just try to cause chaos among the ordinary people who have no power to defend themselves. So what are you people doing in the era of trying to make sure that the rule of law is actually applied, is actually taking place, not just for those who are actually in the branch of government or those who work for the government, but also for for the people outside of government? What people are actually doing? Because we see a lot of people doing things. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Flomo.
Okay. Thank you, Brother Flomo. I wanted to go back to Brother to see whether he was speaking based on any specific experience or in what context when you say police not protecting or not going after people. I'm not too clear with that.
Okay. Mr. Flomo, if you have chance, please, dial *61 again, so we can allow you to clarify your question. Counselor needs specific on people breaking the law, doing things that are outside the law. So we ask that you please make a new entry or clarification. Until then, I'll take George Toto. George Toto, please tell us where you're calling from and your question for Counselor Jan-neh.
Yeah, this is George Toto. I'm calling from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Counselor, and welcome.
Thank you.
Counselor, I have two concerns, if you can address. Recently, we've been hearing things on the news concerning members of the legislatures and some members of the executive branch of the government where they were arrested and put in jail. And there are certain language I came across, the word contempt. If you can explain that for me, whether members of the legislature have the right to look at the Constitution to arrest and put anybody in jail. And then my next question is on the issue of citizenship. If the Constitution already addressed that issue, or is just a partner core?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, my brother. On the issue of contempt, let me just give you a little background and where I think how far this forum might be able to properly examine the question. Contempt is one of those provisions, is one of those things conferred by the Constitution of Liberia on two branches of government, the legislature and the judiciary. Within a broader context, it is supposed to be exercised by either of those two branches where a person's conduct obstructs the working, the operation of the branch or a part thereof. Now, how the contempt powers can be used is an ongoing debate in Liberia. The Constitution broadly speaks to contempt powers. Now, how it should be properly applied, what are the limits? It says the national legislature will say that by passing an act. Up to this point, we have not been able to have that legislation passed. Now, but the Constitution at the same time has said clearly that whatever power granted by the Constitution to any authority, the use of that power must be consistent with the principles and laws stipulated in the Constitution. And one of those things is to protect the rights of due process of law. Now, what is due process? The Liberian laws, both in terms of the laws on the statute as well as interpretation, which we call decisional laws, have all elaborated on what constitutes due process. The first thing is that the person that you want to call in and you are charging with contempt must be notified. That notification will require that you say to the person that come in, this conduct on your part we consider as contemptuous, so come and explain to us why we should now hold you in contempt of us as an institution or of our authority or of our function. Now, when you do that, and this is a mandatory requirement under the Constitution, then you must give the person an opportunity to be heard. Having notified, in other words, you can't say, come and can give me some information about your office. And when the person appears, then you turn that into contempt proceeding, unless the person's conduct right before you is such that it's contemptuous. It's an affront to your authority. Other than that, the law requires that the person must have notification. And when a person appears, they should also be able to present their side of the story. If they want to do it as an individual person, or they want to do it through a lawyer, or both, the law says they must be allowed to do so. There must be orderly proceeding and all of that. Now, if any of those elements is not respected, then it's difficult in the contemplation of law to say that a person has been accorded due process. Now, I wouldn't say that I'm speaking specifically about the events that just took place recently, because that particular issue is currently before the Supreme Court of Liberia. And I'm very confident, I'm supremely confident that the court will speak to that issue in a way that we hope that we all will understand from now on what are those things that will be expected of each person, each institution in its proper exercise of contempt powers. Now, on the question of citizenship, the Liberian Constitution is very clear on citizenship, and that is who is a citizen, and that it does not also provide a judgment, anything called being citizen for more than one country. You're either a Liberian citizen or you are not. What appears to be the current discussion is to pass a law that will probably make a reform of the current law, maybe through the constitutional review process that has just been commenced. We can think about it, because all of us know that the citizenship question has been, to a large extent, one that has, in some instances, served as a hindrance to the kind of forward movement that is necessary for a country that has been at war with itself for more than 14 years. Take, for example, no one can practice law in Liberia according to our current laws if that person is not a Liberian citizen. And we also have a statutory definition of what constitutes practice of law. It means if you are teaching law in Liberia, that is considered in the eye of the law as a practice of law. And the law currently is that no one should practice law unless you are a Liberian citizen. Now, this is a law that many will say is not responsive to the current needs of the country, where there are so many, where there is very little number of lawyers practicing law, and they are mainly in the urban areas, And if you go in a rural area where most of our people live, you find almost a non-existence of lawyers in this area. Yet we have a law that says only Liberian citizens should practice law. So basically, this is a matter that is currently on the active agenda, and I hope that the diaspora, those in the diaspora here, can contribute immensely to a lively discussion in respect to the citizenship question in Liberia.
Thank you, Councillor. Flomo made a comeback. He's going to clarify his question. Mr. Flomo, welcome back to the Liberian Diaspora Forum.
Thank you again, Brother Kromah, for taking my call. Well, I will change my question since, of course, that question was for law enforcement. I will go to the Honorable with this question. It says, Article 18, all Liberian citizens shall have equal opportunity for work and employment regardless of sex, creed, religion, ethnic background, place of origin, or political affiliation, or all shall be entitled to equal payment of equal work. Councillor Jan-neh, my question here has to do with the area where we find that there are people in the Republic of Liberia today that are working 2 or 3 jobs. And we have our brothers and sisters that have degrees in different professions. With all of the tuition and hard work, hours of study, they don't have a job. But then we realize that there is one single person there today to be a Zag Rabo Salif. He has 3 jobs. This is not a breach of the Constitution? When you're looking at other people who don't have jobs, but this gentleman has 2 jobs and no one is speaking on the subject. So, Honorable, what do you have to say on the subject?
Thank you.
Well, if you ask me whether there is a constitutional contravention by an act that you believe has been allegedly done by a person, my answer would be that the only forum that has the authority on our law to declare an act unconstitutional is the court of law. I would think that in that case, the majority of the court, if the matter is brought before it, should be able to say that. So I wouldn't like to say more than that. Part of the difficulty in Liberia is that people generally do not want to go to court to challenge government action or action taken by individual persons that others believe contravene the law. And you do not have to be a member of the government or one who has big name to do so. The Constitution of Liberia, under Article 26, gives every Liberian person, in fact, it says, where any person or any association alleges that any of the rights granted under the Constitution or any legislation or directives are constitutionally contravened, that person or association may invoke the privilege and benefit of court direction, order, or writ, including a judgment of unconstitutionality. And the second part there will say, anyone injured by an act of the government or any person acting under its authority, whether in property, contract, tort, or otherwise, shall have the right to bring suit for appropriate redress. All such suits brought against the government of Liberia shall originate in a claims court. Appeals from judgment of the claims court shall be directly to the Supreme Court. Now, my argument has always been that where people believe that the Constitution of Liberia has been contravened, they have the right, under this provision, to raise this issue. Unfortunately, most of the times, we don't do so. And by not acting in that way, I'm afraid that we're not helping the country as much as we should be doing as responsible citizens.
Thank you. I'll take the next caller. No name. Your last 4 digits 7867 763 area code. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and your question for Councillor Jan-neh. 7869.
Okay. Good evening, Councillor Jan-neh. Good evening, Mr. Kromah.
Thank you. Welcome to the Liberian Diaspora Forum.
Okay, thank you very much.
What's your name?
All right. My name is Musa Keita.
Okay, Mr. Keita.
Calling from Rochester, Minnesota. Councillor Jan-neh, first of all, I want to commend you for your positive role played on the Supreme Court bench. The recent development have shown me a lot of things, and the first I would like to say is this a constitutional crisis regarding the contempt against the city major or a political crisis? That's the question I want to answer, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Keita.
Well, Mr. Keita, I know that before I left Liberia a few days ago, a petition was first filed by and on behalf of Superintendent Grace Kpan, asking the Supreme Court to intervene and to order her release from prison because her rights of due process had not been observed by the Speaker and members of the House of Representatives. That petition was examined by the Justice in Chambers, and in keeping with our own rules that where constitutional question has been squarely raised, the matter must be forwarded to the full bench. That petition was forwarded appropriately to the Supreme Court to decide a in-bank, meaning the full court should sit and deal with that question. While that petition was pending, a second precept was filed, what they call bill of information, bringing to the attention of the court that after the court had issued a citation to all the parties to say, we have a petition before us, please come for a conference for us to determine whether there is basis to have this matter forwarded to the Supreme Court in bank to examine the questions that have been raised on due process. This bill of information came to say, the legislature is still proceeding to deal with this issue, though the matter has been filed and is now before the Supreme Court. While that one was there also, a third document or precept was filed, this time a petition for writ of prohibition by the city mayor at the time, Mary Brough, indicating that her rights to due process were being breached. So what the Justice in Chambers did, and I think that was the appropriate thing to have been done at the time, was to file all three petitions to the full bench and appropriate rates issued to all the parties to say, file whatever position you have in defense of your position so that the Supreme Court can take them together and deal with them. And our first job would be when the court opens next week, Monday, which will be March 11, is to set a time for the hearing of these petitions along with the bill of information. And I think I'm very confident that the Supreme Court will speak to the various questions that have been raised. Separation of power, the oversight responsibility assigned to the national legislature by the Constitution of Liberia, the proper exercise of the executive authority which is conferred on to the person of the president, and all of those issues. Because I'm not sure that in the past we have been as a court in a position to deal with these critical questions in a manner that will be adequate. So this is an opportunity for the court to be able to do so. And I think we should give the court that opportunity or allow it to be able to deal with these questions so we can put these things behind once and for all.
Thank you, Councillor. May I remind everyone, including Councillor Jan-neh, that right now we have a total of 157 people on, and 34 of them are waiting in the queue to ask questions. And I don't know if we're going to have time for all of the questions at the rate we are going. But if you're just joining us, don't be deterred by that. Please dial *61 so that we can have your question over to Councillor Jan-neh. And my next caller, your last 4 digit will be 9564. 9564. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and your question for Councillor Jan-neh. 9564.
Good evening, Honorable Associate Justice and members of the Liberian community. My name is Samuel Morgan, and I'm calling from a little town in North Carolina called Indian Trail.
Thank you.
Mr. Associate Justice, the first question I have is this. I understand that the President of Liberia has the power to appoint and to appoint members of her cabinet, and the Senate, not the representative, have the power to approve. Now, I'm conflicted when the House of Representatives is demanding that the President get rid of members of her administration when there has been no proof, there's no proof in court that any crime or any law has been violated. Everything has been alleged to happen. My next question is, my next info here is, Honorable Associate Justice, we all know that within the confines of the development of democracy, one of the most important opposition is the Supreme Court, the Court of Law. And we expect the Court of Law to have character. And what is the Supreme Court of Liberia doing to rid itself of the Roman, I will call that Roman, of the courts in Liberia being corrupt, the courts in Liberia being corrupt? I'll take my question now, my answer now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. On the first question, I indicated earlier that those things that relate to the developments around the national legislature, the presidency, and then executive officers such as the superintendent, the mayor of the city of Monrovia, those are issues that are currently before the Supreme Court. And unless I just want to brush it on the surface, I would prefer for the court to be able to deal with those questions, and then we can discuss the decisions as to whether we agree or don't agree with them. That's a different thing. But for now, they are what we as lawyers we call prejudice. So we will not go into delving into those questions. Suffice it to say, though, that under the Liberian Constitution, each branch of government has authority and powers which are given to that a branch of government by the Liberian Constitution. Now, the legislature, the judiciary, they are very different from the executive branch of government. For example, the powers, the authority granted to the national legislature are given to the body, to the institution. For example, the speaker as a person cannot get up and exercise anything unless the House of Representatives sit in plenary and authorizes some action. The same with the Senate. The national legislature as a branch can take action only if authorized by the body. The judiciary, similar to that of the legislature, the Supreme Court as the highest body there, as the highest court, can take an action or make a decision only if the Supreme Court decides as a majority. In other words, the Chief Justice has no such authority. The court must sit and at least 3 members must say this is where we are proceeding. That becomes the decision of the court. So in other words, the powers, the authority are vested in the institution, not any one individual. Those 2 branches of government are different from the executive. Under our law, all the powers of the executive department, the executive branch of government, are vested in the person of the president. That is why ordinarily the president will choose who he or she wants to work with, and those names are sent to the Senate for confirmation. And the Senate ordinarily is not supposed to reject those things unless there is compelling reason to do so. Because you do not want to tie the hand of the president, who must exercise this enormous power as the person of the president. That is also the reason why, under our Constitution, there's one person that no one can go to court and get a writ for and go and serve it on that person. That's the president. As long as that person is president, no court can issue a writ to go and serve it on that person. The only time a president can be served a court precept to appear is when the person has been removed, and that is not when the person is serving. Someone will say, well, so it means the person is above the law? No. The law is saying if you allow anyone to go to court and take and get a writ to be served on a president, there will be so much chaos because almost everybody running, getting writ, that the president will be unable to carry out the enormous responsibility imposed on that person by the Constitution. So where the president's conduct becomes so terrible, the thing to do is for the national legislature to rise up to the occasion and act by removing the president through impeachment proceedings. It is only after that that person can be subjected to criminal proceedings. So these are the differences. So there's separation of power and the authority each branch of government is given, how those powers should be properly exercised. I would think that those are the issues right now before the Supreme Court. It is my hope that the court this time will take its own time to examine these questions very, very clearly so that we do not have to be faced with this kind of problem anymore.
Thank you, Councillor. My next caller is 718 area call. The last 4 digits.
Let me. I think there was a second part which I guess he talked about. He asked about corruption. Hello,
I'm listening, Councillor. Go ahead.
Yeah. The second part of the brother's question was that there's rumor about corruption. Well, what I can see is that under our law, those who are supposed to be judges two things are required. First, there must be people of impeccable character. There must be people that people respect because they stand for something. The second thing is that the government must pay them well so that they cannot be easily susceptible to corruption. Both of these things are being worked on right now. Take, for example, 6 years ago, a circuit judge was receiving a total salary and allowance around $300 US. And in fact, before 6 years ago, sometimes these judges, when if they were very lucky, they got paid twice a year. This $300 now per month, they got it twice a year. If they were very lucky, 3 times a year. Between 2006 and 2012, 2010, the government of Liberia rising up to its duty to ensure that judges were provided for adequately to be able to, not fall for just anything. These circuit judges now who were making $300 and could hardly get it except 3 times a year or 2 times a year, these circuit judges now are making $4,000 US per month, and they get it before the end of every month. So much is being done, so much is expected of them. That is, in fact, the reason that from 2006 to 2010, I remember as head of the Judicial Inquiry Commission that the number of magistrates that were removed from office was very high. I think they were around between 10 and 15 for unethical conduct, and some of them relating to ethical breach. And just the last time before we closed, 2 circuit judges were suspended. One was suspended because he made a decision on a matter that had already been decided by his predecessor a couple of years back. So the question was, what actually tempted this man to going back to review a matter that had been decided by a colleague? The Supreme Court was of the view that there were pecuniary considerations. And this judge was suspended for 6 months, what we call shaming. Now, someone will say, well, why you didn't ask them, the legislature, to impeach the person? Yeah, that's a second option. But you see, impeachment is always a political act. You can send a person in there, and the legislature could vote and say no, and then you have to bring the man back. But under Article 75 of the Liberian Constitution, the court has administrative authority over these judges. So administrative actions that are within our constitutional limits and authority, those were the ones we thought to apply where this person has been found wanting as far as ethical issues are concerned, and we say we will now see how you behave from now on. So yes, we admit that there are instances of transgressions, but where and whenever those things are reported, actions are taken. So people can't think that they can do this thing and go with impunity.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll go back up. If you're just joining us, please dial *61 if you have question, comment, or concern. If you're at work, you can call. You might want to text your question to 612-203-3820. If that doesn't work either, by all means, please email your question to LiberianDiasporaForum@live.com. I'll take the next caller. The area code is 718. The last 4 digit 4074 4074. Please tell us where you're calling from and your question for Councillor Jan-neh.
Hi, Councilor Jan-neh. I'm Harris Gunsi. I'm calling from New York, Staten Island.
Welcome to the Liberian Diaspora Forum.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Councilor. My question here is, I really want to understand the word nepotism. And from your own analysis, Councilor, is nepotism being practiced in Madame Salif's government? Because when you read her book, she spoke against nepotism, that former president or the late president Tobo carried it on. The former president Cllr to practice the same act. Is it being really carried on in her government? And secondly, do we have anything in the Constitution that prohibits president from appointing their direct relative? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. You know, and let me just see, speaking, simply as a citizen, I know that's difficult, but let me just attempt to do so. I have a difficulty when certain things are not put in place to give us a clear direction as to what this thing is or what it is not. When you read the Liberian Constitution on the general principles, there is a mention there of nepotism. When you go further to say, I want to hold this person for violating what the rules should be, regulating or defining what a nepotistic act would be, then that's where you begin to run into problems. The national legislature has not yet said to us by definition what constitutes nepotism. Generally, and in many jurisdictions, they define it statutorily. They say nepotism would be whether your brother is qualified or is not qualified. You can't put your brother in a position, public position. Who that brother is it a brother from one ma, one pa, or just pa, or ma, whatever? Is it a brother from an uncle? Most of us Liberians are from indigenous backgrounds, so sometimes the brother thing can stretch 4, 5 roll down the line. What is it? Now, of course, certain things are just clear. My son, I would say, well, that one should fall in this category. So if you want to go on this discussion on an academic side, yes, academically we can say, well, this one is clear. You don't have any definition. But if it comes to law enforcement, it's rather difficult for anyone to get up to go to court now and say this is a violation, apply the rule. That would be difficult. My advice has always been that rather than keep talking about this problem, why can't we proceed and pass a law specifically addressing this question and providing appropriate penalties therefore? Because the moment we do that, then we put this question to rest. What is murder? Murder is blah, blah, blah. It's in our statute. What is marriage? Marriage is a union between a man and a woman. That's why our domestic relations law says anything outside that cannot constitute marriage within the contemplation of Liberian law. But unless you provide these defining lines and meanings and definitions, they are left to endless discussions, which oftentimes can only be academic. And you leave the court that's supposed to decide this question very little parameters within which to make these decisions. That's the difficulty we have in Liberia when it comes to the question of nepotism. And I think it is for the national legislature to rise up to its responsibility and proceed to put the appropriate law in place.
Thank you. Our next caller is Aaron Kennedy. Aaron Kennedy, please tell us where you're calling from and your question for Councillor Jan-neh. Mr. Kennedy? Aaron Kennedy? Tell us where you're calling from and your question for the councillor.
I'm calling from Massachusetts.
Okay.
Worcester, Massachusetts. Councillor, I want to thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
You mentioned something about the decision of the court will be handed down maybe March 11. I want to know how we
March 11 will open, and then we will announce when we can have them appear before the Supreme Court to defend their respective positions, and then we'll come down with a decision thereafter.
Yeah. My point is, I'm very much interested in reading that decision because we on this side can't get a copy. How can we get a copy from about that decision on this side?
Okay, I think that's a good question. In recent time, we've been circulating our opinion, and some of them very interesting opinions. Some of them we would like for you to read and even tell us how you see some of them, because we take criticism, Sometimes we are human beings. Sometimes we might look at an issue in a particular way, and someone will say, why did you also look at it from this angle? And that can be very helpful. Take, for example, when we decided the issue about the constitutional requirement of 10-year residency. I thought that was such an important decision, and that we were going to get some reaction, especially from our brethren in the diaspora. But I remember getting, comments just from 2%, and I thought that was just grossly inadequate. But what we could do, though, is maybe discuss with this forum how we can get these opinions transmitted to you, so that you can widely circulate it to our community. Maybe I will talk it over with the organizers of this forum, and maybe I can take some responsibility to ensure that we pass it on every time opinions are rendered, especially those that are of major political impact, on our body politic, so that you can have the opportunity to access and read them.
Thank you. I have a text message question here. Let me read that before I take the next question. The writer writes, what is the educational requirement for judges and magistrates in Liberia?
Until recently, when we changed the law, the requirement for a magistrate was that he or she should be able to read and write English. We thought that was not sufficient in a modern, sophisticated world as we are living in today. So now there's a requirement that you must not just be able to read and write English, but you must also undergo some basic studies. And so the Supreme Court created this institute called Judicial, James A. Pierre Judicial Institute, which will train anyone first who has graduated from a university, take an aptitude exam for proficiency in the English language, not just being able to speak it, but to write it as well. And then you undergo 1 year training at the Judicial Institute. The first batch of persons that we train, a total number of 65, we have just assigned them around the country. There's a total number of 300 and 350, I think between 350, 375 magistrates across the country. So the first batch that we trained was a total number of 65. So that is an ongoing program intended to help remove most of the old guys who have been there and have very little understanding of the law, though they have served in some of these capacities for many, many years. As for a circuit judge, the requirement is that you must, I think the age requirement is, 25? I'm not sure about that, but I think it's around 25 years of age and above. And then you must be an attorney at law. That means you must have gone to law school and obtained a law degree. Before 2006, many of our circuit judges did not meet this requirement. But between 2006 and 2008, there is not a single circuit judge today operating in Liberia who has not met this these studies requirement. Every circuit judge today in Liberia is a graduate of a law school. And then, of course, the character thing and all of that. And there is the same requirement for a justice of the Supreme Court. So those are the requirements. Of course, Liberian citizenship is a must because you can't practice law in Liberia unless you are a Liberian citizen.
Thank you. If you're just joining us, folks, tonight we have the privilege of hosting the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of Liberia, Kabineh Jan-neh. He's speaking on the rule of law in Liberia, to be specific. We are entertaining questions, so if you have one, by all means, please dial *61, and we will open up your line. We'll go to the next caller. The area code is 240. Your last 4 digits, 3092. 3092. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and your question for Councilor Jan-neh. 3092. Hello? 3092? 240.
Oh, yes. Hi.
Hi.
Can
what's
you
your
hear
name?
me?
Where you call? Yeah, I can hear you. What's your name? Where you calling from? And what's your question?
My name is Melinda Gibson. I'm calling from Maryland. I'd like to know, is there any way the Supreme Court, because I know the people of Liberia do not know the law, what they can do, to the senators or representatives if they're not performing the duty well? Is there any way they can educate these people where the Constitution says that these people can go and, sign an appeal to repeal their lawmakers because these people are not functioning well? Is there any way that they can educate the people on the law? Because these people are in the House because our people elect them based on popularity and not based on, what they know to help them or what they know to do to improve the community. So we need to educate our people on these lawmakers. Can the Supreme Court help?
Okay, thank you. Councilor Jan-neh?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sister, for that question. In fact, you see, nowhere democracy works where the citizens themselves are not actively engaged with the body politic. Nowhere. Because the Liberian people wanted our constitution, our current constitution, 1986 constitution, to be not a document that will get shelved, but a working document, a document that would be part of our daily living. They wrote what you call their own aspiration in an article. So an article captures the aspiration of Liberian people with respect to the Constitution. It says, and this is Article 10 of the Liberian Constitution, the Republic shall ensure the publication and dissemination of this Constitution throughout the Republic and the teaching of its principles and provisions in all institutions of learning in Liberia. Now, In other words, the Constitution, because those who wrote this Constitution wanted to be a living document, they made it a requirement that the Constitution should be taught throughout the Republic. It must be printed and made available to all the Liberian people. I am not aware of any time where the national legislature specifically provided money to ensure that Article 10 is implemented. Maybe they will say, oh, but you know what? We gave money to schools. Yeah, I agree. But my way of reading this provision, this article, is that it's not just conventional schools. Even on a palava huts, small gathering where people will be empowered to teach, like what the sister was talking about. What are those things? Generally, Liberian elections are not issue-based. They are basically, and up to now, well, unfortunately, we have to say, our politics is driven ethnically and regionally. Oh, this man is our brother, so we elect him. Oh, this man is from or this sister is from our region, so we elect. That's the way our elections have been. Our elections have never been, generally speaking, based on issues. So the people that we elect are a reflection of ourselves. There are people who sit in these institutions that know very little about the workings of this institution. But these are our representatives. My issue has been, once we have elected them, we have a responsibility now to help them by engaging them. Because those who were there last term and were able to come back, between you and me, the way I see them engage issue, discuss issue, is far better than most of the people who are just coming. So it seems to me they learned a lot the last 6 years. So it is the way we proceed. So the Constitution is a major part of that discussion. And all of us have to help to find a way so that we understand what our responsibilities are and we work to helping those that we have put in this position to help move the country forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. We are about halfway through the show, and if you haven't had a chance to ask your question, by all means, please dial *61, or you can text your question to 612-203-3820. Our next caller, no name, wireless caller, the last 4 digits 1730 1730. Please tell us where you're calling from, your name, and your question for Councillor Jan-neh. 1730.
Yeah. Hello, Councillor. My name is Isaac, and I'm calling from Georgia. My question has to do with the wind down of the oil mill in the country right now taking effect. Police going to be taking over the country, and I just listened to you. You made mention about magistrate or lawyer or judges making $4,000 United States dollars, and they are being paid at the end of every month. The patrolmen in the street of Monrovia, that don't have the proper training and no logistics, are they prepared enough to take over the country, even with the low salary they're making right now? That's my question to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Isaac. I wish I were the Minister of Justice, though that's not a position I would really like anymore. But the truth of the matter is that there is a lot to be done to get the police to where we want them to be. I usually go to the police academy and offer some help in terms of teaching some of the courses they have there. A few years back, one of the things we tried tried to do during the transitional period when I served as Minister of Justice was to develop a police cadre that will be able to have a strategic focus as to where we are going. Now, it was a very difficult transition, and I'm going to the background because that will help us understand where we are now. It was a very difficult transition because the international partners were of the view that between 2003 and 2005, at the time elections were scheduled, we must be able to train minimum of 3,000 police officers. In fact, the target actually was 3,500 police officers. We said, okay, what are the criteria? Now, how do we manage this? What are the resource requirements and all of that? Well, our partners were of the view, particularly our friends, the Americans, that this was doable. Train 3,500, and then you let them do police work across the country. Certainly, you must raise this to 6,000 at some point. But between now and 2005, when you are scheduled to conduct your national elections, you must be able to do this. So, because we didn't want it compromised, a national committee was set up and generally headed by our partners, because the fear was, look, if you allow ourselves to go in there and hear these things, we will allow the system not to be, we will allow the system, or we will compromise at some point in time. So let us agree on the criteria, and then we put our own partners there to manage it along with ourselves, especially the recruitment. What were the criteria? Criminal background checking. 2, education. There was educational requirement that you must be a minimum of a high school graduate. We wanted ethnic, regional balance, or sort of thing. So all of these things were put in place. Of course, the other thing was, how much money do you have to pay these people? Now, at that time, a police officer, a patrolman, was making, I think around $1,000 or less, which means at that time we're talking about less than $20 US. We say, okay, how do we start this? Can we give something that will attract people? What was affordable at that time was around $85, $90. Of course, it was a very small amount, but compared to where we were coming from, it was almost like a leap. We recruited. I'm not sure we were able to get 3,500, but we were able to get up to 3,000. The training was anywhere between 6 to 9 months. Now, the moment most of these people were trained and deployed, and then other areas started to get salary that were more in other areas, they started to leave the police and other security institutions. And it seems to me, now I can't speak to the details because I think the Minister of Justice, whenever she's in town here, you should be able to engage her. She will be in a better position to speak to the details. But what is clear is that as people are trained as police officers, whenever there are other opportunities that present better conditions of service and salary, they go there. Now, on the question whether we are ready to take over all of the functions, I think even UNMIL itself, the United Nations, is quite aware that the handover must be done gradually. As we train people who provide logistical support, for them adequate to allow them do the work. We cannot rush to get changing everything and letting it still go away. And in recognition of that, the United Nations is working today with the national security agencies to put in place regional police, national security presence at regional level in past areas of the country. For example, Nimba, Bon, and Lofa, there's something we call National Security Hub, which is a big complex put in that area to service Nimba, Lofa, and Bon in terms of police and security requirement and the ability to respond to major activities in those three counties. That one was just inaugurated by the president sometimes in February. The second one is being built around Maryland area there. And so they will be building 5 of those. All of those things will have to be done with the necessary training put in place, with the recruitment of people, and after training, deploying them before we talk about UNMIL finally leaving Liberia. So we all recognize that it's a gradual process, and much is being put into it, both by the Liberian government and our international partners, to ensure that by the time UNMIL finally packs up and is leaving Liberia, adequate preparation would have been made to ensure that we do not get off the marks that have been put in place at the time.
Thank you, Councillor. Our next caller is Mohammed Dollar from Minnesota. Mr. Dollar, your question for Councillor Jan-neh.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Kromah. Honorable Councillor, my question is, what are the requirements for non-Liberian to own a land in Liberia? Because they have referred to some of us that we have another nationality, so we can't own the land. Can you elaborate on that for us, please? Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Under the Liberian law, and this is a constitutional thing, under the Liberian law, the organic law, the only person who can own property in what we call fee simple, that means full ownership, is a Liberian citizen, and that is for land, real estate. Anyone who is not a Liberian citizen cannot own realty in fee simple, clear cut simple.
Councillor, before I take the next caller, let me make a follow-up on that question. We have the issue of dual citizenship ongoing. So if somebody owned a land in Liberia, owned properties in Liberia, and the person came over here and took up a U.S. citizenship, which according to what we now know, that by doing so, the person forfeits his or her citizenship in Liberia. So then what becomes of that person's property in Liberia?
Well, that is not an issue that has been decided by any court because it hasn't been raised in that manner. But the nearest thing that comes to it is an issue where a Liberian citizen came to America and joined the U.S. Army. Now, the general belief is that by the time you join the U.S. Army, you are an American citizen. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. You can be a green card holder and join the U.S. Army.
Okay, but in this particular case, this man carried an American passport. Is that a conclusive evidence of citizenship?
Right, it is.
Okay. In this man's case, he had this American passport. He had served in the U.S. Army and decided that he was going back to Liberia. But at the time, he had an old Liberian passport. So he took it to Washington, to our embassy, and I think some embassies seize the passport. And they say, you're not an American Liberian citizen anymore, and these are the facts we have on you. He asked his attorney in Liberia to take this matter to the Supreme Court. And his argument had been whether any executive officer has the authority without a court hearing to deprive him or take away his citizenship. He was not saying, from the way I understood the argument, that he didn't have an American citizenship. All he was saying, even if you want to take away my citizenship or declare me as one who is no longer a Liberian citizen, it must be done consistent with the principle of due process. The Supreme Court has not decided that case as yet, but a sub-question before the court will be, what happens to this man's property? The general rule is that when you cease to be a citizen, unless there's someone there who will inherit your property by law, the property goes to the government of Liberia.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting. But that is the law. Our laws have not yet allowed a person to be a citizen of two countries. Not yet. So you're either a Liberian citizen or you are not. And only a Liberian citizen can own land in Liberia. In fee simple. You can get a land by some contract to say you hold it for this period and that period. And it's the same kind of question that is yet to be answered by the Supreme Court, where a foreign company comes into the country, but domestically that may become a Liberian corporation, whether that company can own land in fee simple. And most lawyers, if you talk to them, this is not a matter that has been settled by the court yet, but most lawyers will tell you that if the majority shareholders are non-Liberian, then the company cannot. But that is a legal debate that only the court can decide.
Thank you, Councillor. Our next question will come from 0224, no name, area code 507. 0224, please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and your question for Councillor Jan-neh. Hello? 0224. Hello, 0224. Your name, where you calling from, and your question.
Hello?
Hello?
Are you getting me now?
Yeah, I'm getting you loud and clear. Your name, where you calling from, and your question, sir.
Okay, I'm back in for the second time. This is Musa M. Keita from Rochester, Minnesota.
Okay.
I want to ask the council. There was a recent case that was being adjudicated at the Supreme Court between the Cooper family and a resident of Cooper Beach. Reading the papers in the diaspora, we saw the chaotic images that came from Liberia regarding the ruling of the Supreme Court versus the resident resistance to the ruling of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court have to call back the case to the full bench. And this is not the first time. If precedent must be set, the ruling from the Supreme Court must be enforced by that arm of government to make sure people get a property. It happened in the Eddie Snow case when the Supreme Court said they should return to the status quo ante, and members of the legislature that went to Virginia said no. And that became precedent under our law, because once it was done, it became precedent. Now the Cooper family versus the resident of the Cooper Beach, the case has come back to the Supreme Court. What happened to the first reading, Councillor? That's my question.
Thank you, Mr. Keita.
Well, Mr. Keita, first, the facts you have now full representation of what actually obtained on the ground. The Cooper family was adjudged as the owner of the property in dispute there at the Cooper's Beach. and the court officers went there, and people were being removed, and the properties, because it involved a number of property owners there. I mean, those who had deeds from fictitious owners, you know, people who had documents that were just not legitimate records, legitimate documents. When the court decided the matter in favor of the Cooper family, all of the people who had been affected by that decision came together and went to the Cooper family and made arrangement with the Cooper family. I am aware that there are many people now who have, in fact, made arrangement and are purchasing whatever piece of land they have, because most of the property they had already been developed. And the Cooper family thought that what we might want to do, instead of just removing these people from here, we will let them buy the property, the land from us. And that is the arrangement that we are aware of. There have been similar issues involving the former mayor of Painesville, Mrs. Reeves. And that involved something, I think, 6 to 7 acres. And all the people there also had to go to Mrs. Reeves, and they negotiated some settlement arrangement. And it was through that they went back on the land. Other than that, the court would normally evict them. Now, the one with Edwin Snow, you know very well that at the end of the day, the legislature, as much as they were not happy with the decision that the Supreme Court made, but at the end of the day, they had to comply, and they did so. Because at the end of the day, they had to go back to the capital where they sat, and it became clear that even if Edwin Snow went back and sat there, their decision would be to reconvene and follow the rules and remove him. Apparently, they have become very clear that that's the way they're going to proceed. And of course, the Supreme Court will say, look, even if you have the authority to remove your speaker, there are procedural requirements that must be strictly followed. You did not follow those procedural requirements. So go back and follow those things. So when he went back, apparently failing to do that, then Edwin Snow resigned. So as much as there are instances where Supreme Court decisions are not very palatable, yet at the end of the day, people have generally complied with those decisions. Now remember now that we are making progress as a nation that is coming from war and as a nation that is experimenting with democracy.
Thank you. Folks, if after the show, if you want to listen to the repeat broadcast of tonight's show, the number to dial will be 559-726-1299, with the same access code you used to come on the show tonight, 908209 pound. And right after the show, you can begin dialing that number to listen to repeat broadcast. A few days later, like all of our other previous shows, this show will be uploaded up on YouTube, so you can go and listen to the audio. With that said, I'll take my next caller, Musa Kamara. Musa Kamara, where are you calling from? And your question for Councilor Jan-neh.
Welcome, Brother Kromah. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Jan-neh, welcome to the United States. On behalf of Bang Mandingo Association, I welcome you as being from Bang. I don't have much question tonight. I just want to welcome you that a lot of Bani are listening to you, and we are pleased over hearing that Liberia is like an experiment state. It's going to take a while, but I'm hoping and I believe that we will get there one day. Everything will be all right. But one quick question. We heard that the government is constructing new roads from here to Grand Jire, if I'm not making a mistake. And now they are marking people's property, saying that they're going to make the road bigger. do you have any information about appraising people's property? Because what I'm hearing that they have their own engineer, they will appraise your property for you, and whatever they give you is what you're going to take. Is it true?
Thank you.
Well, thank you for it. I hope too that all of you from BAN will, find a way for us to talk before I leave, so that some of the projects that are being undertaken there, we see how you can have some direct involvement in helping. The city mayor was here recently. She said to me that she met with many of you, so we are very grateful. So we can continue to help the city. Now, coming back to your question, under Liberian law, the government has the authority to look at your property and take it from you or take part thereof, as long as the property that is been taken away is going to be used for the good of the public. The same law says that when they take the property from you, they must give you back what the law calls just compensation. So you and the government will sit down and agree on an amount that is considered reasonable. If you can agree, then go to court. The court will make a fair determination of that just price, and then they will give you that. The law also says if the government decided at some point in time that this property will take from John Brown for this public purpose, there is no more use for it for the public purpose, then and they want to return it, they must first ask you. They say, here is this property, we don't have use for it again. Do you want it? We should call the right of the right to refuse first. Okay? That right is for you to say, no, I don't want it. If you say you want it, then you have the right to take it. Of course, taking that, you give government the value of the property or whatever amount you agree on. Now, every time government goes somewhere to break a property down because they want to expand the rule, they usually do so by contacting the person, and there's a negotiated amount. I am aware, for example, when I was in Chambers, that someone came to the office, to the court, and said that there was a piece of property they had, and the Ministry of Public Works had marked it, and they wanted to break it down because they say it was part of the rule, and the person did not comply with the zoning law of that area. And the person was saying, no, that's not true. In fact, I got a permit from the Ministry of Public Works to allow me build where I have my structure. We sent out to the Ministry of Public Works, they sent their engineers, they went there, they measured, and it was found that what the man said was true. The government, in order to take that building down, paid this person, as far as I know, a check, and I'm talking about one-time payment, a check of $150,000. The person received the money, acknowledged receipt of the check before that building was put down. But there are instances, many instances, where people have constructed on the rule in violation of the zoning law. Now, in those instances, I'm not sure any court will say, pay this man. So those are the instances when there's a legitimate claim, yes, government will pay. And if government does not want to pay you, you have recourse. You can go to the court and ask the court to intervene. And I am not aware of any instance where the court has ordered the government to pay somebody and the government refused to do so. I'm not aware of any. Not recently. So that's the
Thank
situation.
you. Thank you. Folks, we are nearing the end of this program, so we are getting there sooner than you think. So we'll try to hurry through to see how many of you we can accommodate still. Mr. Bangali Tawari, calling from Minnesota, your question for Councillor Jan-neh.
Thank you very much. You just said I'm calling from Minnesota, Bangali Tawari. Yeah, Councillor, thank you very much for coming to this show to enlighten our minds on a lot of legal issues. Listening to your explanation, certain things I just keep thinking about, and I still want some clarity with respect to that. And my question comes in twofold. You talk about the law being strictly that you have to be a Liberian to practice law in Liberia, which is, of course, the law. But I'm thinking another way around, in an instance where, say, there's a high-profile case in Liberia, also involving a non-Liberian citizen who, one way or the other, might be partner of a corporation that exists in Liberia, but he or she is not a Liberian, and wishes to have something we may call international lawyer to take part in this case, whatever way, either as a research lawyer in the background. How do you look at that? Is that also forbidden? Is that a background lawyer who is not a Liberian is stopped completely? That's my first question. And the second question is, you also being a product of the law school of Liberia, I understand, you might have understood what are some of these, what are some of the rationale. So my question is, what you think is the rationale behind this whole thing that you must be a Liberian to practice law in Liberia? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
On the first one, as far as I know, you know, the law is intended to ensure that Liberian citizens first and foremost benefit from the resources of their country. Well, if you say this is, protectionism, probably it is. But that has been the law in Liberia. But it was not always that way. There was a rule of code that says once you study law in American jurisdiction or comparable jurisdiction and you went to Liberia, you could be admitted to the bar. At some point in time, that law changed. Today, not only you will not be allowed to practice law in a court of law, but anything that relates to practice of law in Liberia, you cannot do unless you are a Liberian citizen. And the law doesn't stop there. The law defines what constitutes practice of law. It says to teach law is a practice of law. So professors that leave from here and go to Liberia to teach law, they are doing so in contravention of that law. Strictly speaking. Those who go, they sit in offices and provide consultancy, they are also violating that law. Now, I think that at certain point in time, because we know this law seems to be too restrictive, in some offices, we bring them, we let them sit down there and write papers, give us some legal advice and things in such a way as to impact our work. But that also constitutes practice of law. So if the bar wanted to, they could go to court and ask the court to stop those kinds of things. So it seems to me that at some point in time, I'm sure the Liberian National Bar Association might want to look at this question maybe in a way that will inspire some discussion as to whether this is a law we want to keep or we want to reform. But that is the law for now. It's only the medical field where people can come from different jurisdictions, and once you meet the requirements of the medical board, they will give you license and you can practice. For the legal profession, no. Two things. Either you become Liberian citizen, and then secondly, you meet the educational requirement. I know of two persons who have come from America recently and have gone to Liberia. Of course, they were all born Liberian citizens, but there are indications that they are currently American citizens, and they went to Liberia to seek admission. And I think because of that issue, their applications are still being considered. And I am sure that unless this question is clear, it will be very difficult to have them admitted to the bar as attorneys at law to practice law in Liberia.
Thank you.
I think it's basically to, I don't know what I would call it, protectionism.
Okay.
I really don't know. I think first time it was intended to say, well, this profession. My brother, when some of us went to law school, even your need, to be seen in law school those days was a tough thing. It's always been a profession for just few people. Yeah.
I think that's very sad for a country that has backlog of cases due to shortage of lawyers and legal practitioners. I think that's sad. The next caller comes from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Manu Belete. Welcome to the Liberian Diaspora Forum. Your question for Councillor Jan-neh.
Yeah, thank you very much for answering my call or putting me through, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, Councillor Jan-neh.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, this is the question I have for you. At the beginning of 2007, there was this case between former Speaker Snow and members of the legislature. And it went to the Supreme Court. In his defense, he submitted a secret recording of some of his colleagues who alleged that they were giving money to remove him. But later, the Supreme Court dismissed the case. So, on what basis did the Supreme Court dismiss that case? I want to know that. One, if for any reason the Supreme Court dismissed that case, do you think the secret recording allegation that Honorable Ford is surrounded by, if it should go to court, do you think looking at judicial precedents, your decision at that time can in any way affect your ruling on any case that given the fact that the legislature has already called for an investigation into the matter? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belete.
Yeah, let me just provide some information. The full matter is not yet before the Supreme Court, so no one can say correctly that the Supreme Court has dismissed the matter. We can't dismiss a matter that is not before us.
No, he said if that matter comes before you based on precedent, that's what you think will be your court ruling. based on
precedent. Okay. Then I didn't understand it. Yeah, but I would prefer not to speculate as to what the court will do. I will wait until the matter is brought up and the court will deal with the matter based on the facts and evidence that will be presented to it. So the fourth is about what I can say also slightly in relation to this is that there are related issues right now that are pending before the Supreme Court. Now, at the Supreme Court level, we do not go down there to take evidence. Only the matters that have been brought, for example, whether the legislature acted within the limits, the contemplations of law in respect to the proper use of contempt powers, those are the issues before. The other issue is whether the legislature may properly request the executive department to fire personnel of that department, considering the fact that there is separation of power. What constitutes legislative oversight of executive function? Those are the matters before the Supreme Court, and I think the Supreme Court will deal with them when we open for the March time 2013.
Is that it, Councillor?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Folks, please limit your questions to just one per person. We are running out of time, and there's still so many of you here in the queue. I doubt it if you will all have the chance to ask questions. But I think if we just keep it to one per person, we might be able to accommodate everyone. 3092, I believe this is a repeat caller, 3092. Please tell us your name again, where you're calling from, and your question this time for Councillor Jan-neh.
I'm Queen. My name is Melinda Gibson, and I'm calling from Maryland.
Okay.
And I wanted to ask, my question is, with this recent incident that arises with Superintendent Bond and Ford, I know they have issues Superintendent Bond, but everything seems to be centered around she and Liberal. If the House does not do anything to Representative Ford, can the Supreme Court step in and summon him for investigation? Because I figure someone taping somebody and, bringing the issue to light, in my opinion, I don't think she violated anything but just expose somebody. If I were doing the taping, I would do it with picture and put it on every billboard around Africa or around the world. So if the House does not do anything to this man, because I know a lot of them doing it, that's why they're trying to distract the issue from him. So can the Supreme Court step in and bring that man to justice? Because his position to me violate what he did, his corruption or, soliciting for.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gibson. The way the system works, the law does not give the Supreme Court any authority to go after a person who may have committed a crime, even in the glaring public view. That role is assigned strictly to the Ministry of Justice. Unfortunately, the way the court system works is the court only sit there until somebody approaches it. The court does not go out to start asking questions. It waits until a matter is brought before it. Now, if you ask me now, okay, can the citizens do something about this? Yes. And one way for the citizens to do something about this is to put pressure on their representatives. Another way to do it is to ensure that they put pressure on the Ministry of Justice to take action. Because once the law has been broken, the Ministry of Justice has a duty under the law to take appropriate action. But the court itself does not in law we call sua sponte. That means on its own accord, its own motion, proceed there to go and ask questions. No. If the court is any giant, is a sleeping giant waiting to be awakened by some action.
Okay. Thank you. 1775, 1775. Your name, where you calling from, your question quickly for Councillor Jan-neh. 1775. Hello, 770-1775. Are you there? Okay. One person must be asleep. We'll skip that. 9564. Your name, where you calling from, your question for Councillor Jan-neh.
Again, my name is Samuel, and I'm calling from North Carolina. My question here is to the Associate Justice. What is the law for an intestate estate in Liberia, an estate that has no will? Because my concern is there have been a lot of wealthy Liberians having children all around, don't legitimize them, doesn't want to support them, and may die and not leave a will, and only half of their children enjoy while the others don't. Is there a law on the book that addresses that?
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. The interstate law is finding out decision and estate law, which is a statute. Now, if a person, say his father dies and he didn't leave any will, or the mother dies, didn't leave any will, then all the property that person left will be managed under the interstate law of Liberia. Meaning, the court will decide when the proper people appear and petition the court how to go about dividing that property. If the man left a widow, left a wife who's become a widow, that widow has some percentage of that property. For example, the widow is entitled to 1/3. The property will be divided into 3 equal halves. If that cash, it will be the cash will be divided into 3 equal halves, and 1 is for the woman. She can do whatever she wants to do with that money. As for the real estate, I mean land, building, or other things, she's also entitled to 1/3 for her lifetime. That is why when you want to go and lease property from a widow, you have to be careful how much time you're going to pay for. Because the person's interest in that property is only for the period that person is alive. So if this person is like 60 years old, you go and sign 20-year agreement with that person for lease, you just wasting your money. What if the person died 2 years thereafter? In fact, recently we had a case like that where this man, in fact, he said he left a will, and he said, all my properties will go to my wife, and they will be with her until she dies. Once I die before her, all my property, for the money, she will take all. For the real estate, all my property, I have not divided anything. I will leave everything with her. She must enjoy them until she passes. This woman was around 56, 57 years old. She got sick and contacted some Indian people who were leasing the property for some money because she wanted to go seek medical attention. And the people said, well, we can give you some money provided you extend the lease that we have on the property. how much extension you want? 20 years. Well, now after all the negotiation, they finally had to pay off for 20 years the extended period now. The woman took the money, she went to the hospital, 2 years thereafter she died. Now, after the woman in keeping with the will, the property was going, all the properties were for the children. So the children went to take the property, and the lessees came with their documents and said, no, we still got this agreement on this property. Of course, the children's argument was, look, you don't have any property again because the person who gave you the property was entitled to it only for her lifetime. We call it life estate. Now, this matter went to the Supreme Court and said, well, this is like what we call power attorney. When you give power attorney to somebody, the moment you pass away, the power attorney sees it as of that moment. So, yes, there is a law for interstate estate management, and the way it is done is with the wife first and the children go down the line. Now, what happens if the man had a child outside marriage? The law is that child does not inherit. That child does not have what the law calls inheritable blood. In other words, the children who were born in marriage can have share in that property. But he or she who was not a child from marriage does not have any interest that the law will protect and accord to him or her. No. So if you have a father and that father was not married to your mother at the time you were born, and after that there was no marriage between your mother and this father, what the law requires that they should take you to a court and declare that this is my son and prepare the necessary papers, which we call legitimization proceedings. Now, if that is not done, sorry, you have to hustle on your own.
Okay, thank you. Folks, I ask that you stop making entry because obviously it's a local time here, it's 10:06, and that means it's 11:06 to where our guest is. And tomorrow, Monday, and Monday is a busy day for everyone. So we'll take just the remaining questions. Please make no new entry, and then we'll call it a night shortly after we exhaust a few questions remaining here. 1775, your name, where you calling from, and your question for Councilor Jan-neh. So 1775.
Hello, my name is Mohammed Bai. I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia, and thank you, Councilor, for taking your time.
We can barely hear you, sir. Can you speak a little louder?
Yes, hello, my name is Mohammed Bai. I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Councilor for taking his time to answer some of our legal questions. I think we all can agree that one of the common legal problems in Liberia right now is land dispute. We have seen that one land being sold to 3-4 different persons, and even though if the individual goes through the legal procedure, have lawyers and yes state, during some time in the construction process, you have other persons actually coming to take over the land, and they have to go back to court and try to settle it. And this has been the fear of most of us living in the diaspora to even own the land, regardless of what the Constitution says. So what the Supreme Court is doing, or what the government is trying to do in order to actually improve the land system in Liberia so that one property will not be sold to, let's say, 5 or different potential buyers,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, certainly, my brother. In fact, recently I did a little survey just to see the extent and the enormity of the of the land disputes and cases across the country. So I limited the survey to just Monserrado County. And what I did was to look at a period of 18 months and took the records from all the magistrate courts in Monserrado County. And then we said, okay, what is the percentage of land-related disputes vis-a-vis the rest of the other cases? And the average was 70%. 70% of all the matters that went to these magistrate courts were land-related. Because even when you talk about generally criminal mischief, criminal trespass, they all relate to land disputes. Almost all of them. So when you add that to the civil cases, summary proceeding to recover possession of real property, they amounted to around 70%. So that gives you a picture of what as to the size of the land problem in Liberia. Now, what is the court doing? What we have tried to do, mind you, we now in the business of making laws. That is for the national legislature. And oftentimes, whenever they come, they themselves as members have land problems and they come to court. We remind them, look, unless we change some of these laws and deal with the real issue, these problems are going to be here for a long time. One of the major causes of these problems come from the land surveyors. What do? They often know that, look, this land was surveyed yesterday and it had been sold to this lady A. The same surveyor, few months thereafter, will come to survey the same piece of property for Lady B. And they will sign the document as the licensed surveyor. There has been some proposition to the effect that, look, why can the law sanction these kinds of surveyors? Have their license suspended after proving misconduct? But unless the national legislature takes some action, it will be difficult for the court to impose any penalty in the absence of laws providing for such penalty. So, in the land dispute in Liberia, in fact, when you read the United Nations report, they seem to be saying repeatedly that if there's any threat to the peace or consolidation of peace in Liberia, then that problem, that concern is basically centered around land. Land business, land dispute, of course, in the context of Liberia, is historically deeply rooted. From the founding of Liberia, how people acquire land, all of that. But this one about somebody taking one piece of land that has been sold and selling it to somebody else is a major problem. And I am not sure that as a government we have been able to put in place laws that are adequate to deal with these issues. Probably the diaspora also could help us by raising this as part of the concern they have and to push government to ensure that some actions are taken swiftly to put in place laws that will help us tackle this very, very difficult question.
Thank you, Councillor. A text message question coming from Kasimu Sila, a former presidential guard of Liberia Executive Marshal. The question reads, my concern is non-Liberian general from Nigeria is serving as Chief of Staff of Liberia Army. Speaking of non-citizenship, how can you address that constitutionally?
Well, that's not a difficult question to be answered if one takes into account the transitional arrangement that we had. We assign a huge portion of our national security assignment to institutions and to government to help us in such a way that as we move ahead, we will gradually assume those roles. That is why we have the United Nations soldiers still in Liberia providing critical security functions and duties for the safety of Liberia. It is within that context that ECOWAS itself sent troops to Liberia, and those troops up to today are there helping to maintain and secure our peace. It is within that very context that ECOWAS, not just Nigeria, ECOWAS provided some security personnel to help in managing certain security offices. One of them is the Office of Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of Liberia. It seems to me that as we prepare and get our people adequately trained, they will move ahead and take over those functions. I don't see that as a violation in the context of our national security realities. No.
Thank you. 1730. 1730. Your name, where you calling from? Your question for Councillor Jan-neh.
Yeah, my name is Jake. I'm calling from Georgia. My question, or it's a comment actually. Okay, many Liberians in the diaspora profess to be, well articulate, and they are exposed and they have the best idea. Those Liberians, whenever they go to Liberia, whenever they are given the opportunity to go and serve the country, they go and invest money, misappropriate taxpayer money, and run back to the United States or to Europe, and they are being covered by the laws here that they are citizens of the United States and nothing happened to them. Is there any way that you can recommend to the national legislature come up with laws or legislation that any Liberian from the diaspora who went back home gave the opportunity to serve their country, and they invest some money and come back to either Europe, America, or Asia, anywhere, they should be prosecuted and brought back to Liberia. If any reason, they can even be taking their green card or whatever from them, or even strip them of their American citizenship.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you made my day by raising that question. Firstly, there is a treaty between Liberia and the United States of America that allows either government to send back anyone who has committed crime in the other country. Now, I remember this treaty very well because when I served as Minister of Justice, there was a specific request by the United States government to Liberia asking for a man, a Liberian citizen, who, according to the information that we received, had committed Medicare fraud in the United States of America involving federal money. We, upon receipt of this request, extradition request, we put in place the necessary legal process, and at the end of the day, the court did give us the authorization, and that person, though he temporarily ran away from the country, but that person, based on our court judgment, was arrested and taken to the United States, where they were tried, convicted, and they served a prison term. Now, I have a difficulty that in most instances when people run away from Liberia to the United States government has not been very receptive to extradition requests from the Liberian government. And I would think that there has to be a way to get the U.S. to reciprocate when similar requests have been made. But this argument that they usually put before federal authority to say, oh, the Liberian court systems are controlled by the Liberian government, so if we went there, we would not be giving or accord a free, fair trial. For me, it's just preposterous. But there's a bigger problem also. Now, the few persons that are arrested and they are put before the criminal court there, the jury system we have is so terrible that oftentimes they find their way in these jurors in the face of mounting evidence will come back and say not guilty. And the moment that is done under the Liberian criminal law, the court, the Ministry of Justice or the prosecution, the prosecuting attorney have no right under the law, the current law, to appeal the matter to the Supreme Court. So the moment this verdict comes and says not guilty, that's the end of the criminal case. Now, this is one law, in my view, that the legal community needs to sit down and consider, whether we'll reform the jury law or we'll go back to doing something about this law, because it also speaks to the issue of equality before the law. Why will one party be given the right to appeal the case to the Supreme Court, but then the other party is not? But these are the issues. Two things there. Firstly, there has not been what I would call adequate reciprocation between the U.S. government and the Liberian government in respect of people who are accused of committing crime in Liberia and have fled the country and are currently, or they come to the U.S. for refuge. We have not been able to get adequate reciprocity with respect to returning these people, as we have been doing from the Liberian end. The second thing is that the few persons who are prosecuted in Liberia oftentimes get their way through, buy their way through the jury system. The jury system needs to be reformed as quickly as possible. People who have money and are able to buy their way through oftentimes get off the hook because the system is still very, very weak.
Thank you. Councillor, we have a caller from Ghana, West Africa. Your last 4 digit, your last 5 digit, 55951, obviously Ghana code 233. Please tell us your name and what part of Ghana you're calling from, and your question for Councillor Jan-neh.
Hello.
Hello, are you there?
Yes, I'm Bintu Ture, calling from Ghana, Kumasi.
Oh, wow. Welcome to the Liberian Diaspora Forum, Mr. Ray.
Yeah, thank you. Well, my question has to do with the dual citizenship.
Okay.
Why when one denounce his or her biological citizenship, and what is the challenges associated to dual citizenship? How beneficial is dual citizenship, and why will you be denied to take part in domestic activities when returned to your origin?
So is that it?
Thank you very much, sister.
I hope you're not planning to become a Ghanaian citizen, though. We still need you in Liberia. Thank you. All right, Councillor.
When I was in Europe a couple of months ago, I met the Liberian community there, and one major concern was dual citizenship. In fact, they follow up their discussion with me with a visit to Liberia, and they met with some members of the national legislature, including Senator Watterson. And I think thereafter, Senator Watterson drafted a draft legislation seeking to answer some of these questions. Well, I don't have an answer. All I can say is that there are people in support of dual citizenship, and there are those also who are diametrically opposed to any consideration for dual citizenship. Those who are in favor need to just keep it on the active agenda and engage the lawmakers in the country so that they can see it their way and then push the matter further for more public debate so that some kinds of action can be taken in their favor. But it is basically a matter of law for the legislature to consider. And I hope that all of us can contribute to an enlightened discussion on that subject.
Okay. We're almost done, Councillor. Lassana Kamara, where are you calling from and your question for Councillor Jan-neh? Lassana Kamara.
Hello, Councillor Jan-neh.
Yes, sir.
My name is Lassana Kamara, calling from Phoenix, Arizona. Your uncle, son, old man, Lassana Kamara from Brown. My question is about us here, that I have become a U.S. citizen, and I practice in law enforcement job. What contribution can we give to a motherland since Liberia do not accept dual citizenship?
Thank you, Mr.
That's my question.
Well, you can begin to consider how you can come back to Liberia and regain your citizenship so that you can be an active participant in the development process of Liberia. The other way is to come to Liberia also and engage people who are in the policy-making positions to be able to do something about dual citizenship. Since, in fact, the trend today universally is to allow people to carry more than one citizenship. So that's the way I see it.
You talk about coming to Liberia to, regain his citizenship, and that brings another question to mind, a text message question. Someone wrote that if a person loses his or her citizenship by becoming a naturalized citizen somewhere, if that person decided to go back to Liberia, what does it take for that person to become a Liberian citizen again? Do you simply give up the newly acquired citizenship, or you have to go to Liberia and apply for what's the procedure?
Well, if this one can be an example, there was a fellow here who had become an American citizen. When Mr. Cllr won the presidential election, he went back to Liberia and was appointed a minister. He went for confirmation hearing, and one of the senators apparently knew him well and asked him during the hearing whether he was a Liberian citizen. And then, seeing he was on an oath and he did not want to lie, he said, "No, I am an American citizen." So that was the end of that confirmation hearing. So they say, well, you can't be a minister in the government here assuming that responsibility if you are not a Liberian citizen. So the person went back to the president. Now, on our naturalization law, once you are in the country, you are resident, you can file an application for citizenship, and the waiting period is, I think, 3 or 5 years. I'm not sure of the exact time. But the law also says that the president may waive that waiting period. So after the person filed the necessary papers and became a resident, the president waived the waiting period, and the person went to court, and they took the oath of office, and they were restored to Liberian citizenship. It was only after that that the Senate started to proceed with the confirmation hearing. The person was confirmed, and he became minister in the government.
Did that process require the person giving up his or her American citizenship then?
Well, I'm not sure if that question was asked.
Okay.
But to the extent that the Liberian law says you must be only a citizen of Liberia, my assumption is that the person, having gone publicly and declared allegiance to Liberia, I thought that was the same as setting aside all other citizenship.
Okay.
Someone will say, well, he didn't notify the U.S. government. Well, we don't know. But if the U.S. government can take note of those kinds of things, I guess.
Okay. 1466. Please hurry up. We are way over of the limit. 1466. Please hurry up. Keep it brief. Your name, where you calling from, your question. Yeah, your name, where you calling from, your question. Quickly.
My name is Sekou. My name is Sekou Kenneth from New York City.
Okay.
I'm very happy. Today is my first day to come to this show. I'm very happy to listen to the honorable. Here's my question. Actually, I don't know much about Liberian law because I left Liberia a very long time ago. I want to know if Liberia is a religious country or it's a secular state. This is my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Borosego.
Liberia is a secular state. It has no state religion as far as the Constitution is concerned.
Thank you. I'll make Mr. Ability my last caller here. Sorry, folks. Mr. Ability, quickly, what's your follow-up question?
Yeah, actually, I just want to disregard the first question. I'm going to ask new questions now. I want to know if the Supreme Court of Liberia has any website, because I heard the councillor talking about dissemination of the laws and the judge's opinion, and he was referring to the national legislature that they have not made any effort to make any budgetary appropriation for that. So what is the Supreme Court doing to, given that the legislature have their own website and ministries under the executive too, they have their own website?
Thank you. Do we have a website for the Supreme Court, Councillor?
Yeah, but I know that the website was established. Whether it's functioning properly, I don't know that. I'm not sure about that. I know that we attempted creating one. Some people work on the how you call it, template, and it was posted. But my understanding was that someone has to be employed who will regularly go in there and do the updating. So if you went there, I'm not sure you will see anything new. So that's the problem. What I also know is that the current acting Chief Justice has made that one of the things that he calls deliverable in the next term, which is the March term, to make sure that it become active and the opinions that are delivered by the Supreme Court are posted and regularly updated. The template is there, but there isn't much on it.
Thank you. 7867. Very last caller, 7867.
Okay, my name once more is Musa M. Keita. I hope I'm not monopolizing your line, Mr. Kromah.
You keep calling with different numbers. That's how you get here. I'm falling for this. You keep calling with different numbers. Go ahead.
Okay. My last question has to do with the judicial branch. Of recent, for the past 6-7 years, I can say there have been a lot of improvement in the judicial sector in our country. Those lapses I think have been worked on, like the councillor rightly said. But be very prudent that the diaspora youth and others be informed about their regular activities and the meetings that will be posted for the benefit of the diaspora librarian. Those are there, maybe you can hear from all our radio stations. But my question is, Councillor, what are you doing as an individual to impact the lives of those that you think are in the lower courts and are not performing to the expectation of the Liberian people? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you for all your contribution tonight, Mr. Keita. And thanks for... Okay, Mr. Councillor Jan-neh.
Well, the first thing we've done is establishing what we call a judicial institute to work on the capacity gap, the capacity problem, which is a national problem in Liberia. But in the instance of the judiciary being a branch of government that usually receives the minimum in terms of national budget allocation, we had thought that the first and foremost responsibility we have to drive the reform is to provide training and capacity building opportunities for all judicial personnel. I just said to you earlier that the first batch of people that were trained at the institute have already been deployed throughout the country. Now, I am happy to report that I chaired the steering committee that saw the establishment of that institute, which is up and running today. The second batch is being vetted right now, including what we call city solicitors, who are supposed to be prosecutors in those various magisterial courts. We believe that with this kind of process, where we train people, especially at the lowest level, you know, the lowest level courts are the most important courts because these are the courts that the average person, not the big man, not the money man, can easily access and be able to be heard, and his difficulties relating to the law are dealt with. So that is the focus, and we think with this we can make the kind of impact that we need to make on the country and a legal regime.
Thank you, Councillor. I will I will give the floor to make your closing remark, Councillor Jan-neh, but I'm going to take two of these many test questions here, just two of them, and then somehow I still got tons of people lined up here. Obviously, we can't do them all tonight. I'll take two here, two there. Maybe you can include those in your closing remark. This test question reads, are there plans to revise the judiciary system in Liberia? My question stems from the fact that many of our cases on theft, rape have been heard by people who are illiterate, have limited knowledge on the subject matter being discussed, and led to shocking verdicts. So are there any plan to reform the judicial system? The next question is that the issue of the drug law that is now being passed. Can you please address that, sir? Kasimu Sila. I'll take those two test message questions that you can possibly include in your closing remark, and then I'll take Vabwe Kamara here in Minnesota. Vabwe Kamara, please make it quick. We're way over the limit. What's your question for Councillor Jan-neh?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for giving me the opportunity to ask the Honorable Councillor or Associate Judge of the Supreme Court. Welcome to America. I have a very question as a follow-up to one of the person that asked the previous question concerning the land cases. Mr. Justice,
I want to know, is there any way that the justice system can help the land case in Liberia? What I'm referring to, let me just elaborate on it. You will see 2 deeds that is being signed by the same commissioner, by the same land surveyor, or it's being approved, for different persons within the same system, claiming ownership to the land, and approved by the landowner, and at the same time, coming to the the case is open, so all can go to the Supreme Court and present their case. The land commissioner or the township commissioner all approve these deeds, knowing very well that somebody has this land and open a case for the Supreme. Is there any way that the Supreme Court can help, people that have land cases like this, especially that I'm referring to the Copa case, you get the phone and one of the brothers sold this land and another brother coming back from being, no, I don't agree. And Supreme Court went ahead and said, well, you both have to settle this with the family, you see, and all of them have a legitimate document, a legal document for this land. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kamara. Councillor, just one more. I hope we'll remember all of that so you can include it in your closing remark. Mr. Flomo? Flomo. All right. That's a bingo. I'm glad he's not even by the phone. So, Councillor, there you have it. You can make a closing remark if you want to take on, briefly touch on those few questions, if you remember them all, as you do your closing remarks, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me thank the brethren for this opportunity to interact with all of you. I know it is sometimes very difficult to be able to meet with each of you to discuss issues that relate to the forward movement of our country. So I want to thank you, the moderator, and those who have in any way assisted in organizing this program. Now, as a way of, closing, Liberia is our only country, and I believe that changes will come when we, as Liberian citizens, make deliberate efforts to help our country. We can do this by the engagement, the sort that we have done tonight, but by extension and by expansion, engage policymakers in our country in a continuous and sustained way. I know each of us has some friends there. Issues that relate to those things that can either help us to make progress or draw us backward. Those are the kind of issues we need to keep engaging our policymakers on to ensure that the right direction, the right policy actions are taken to help us move forward. Now, whenever I meet Liberian community people, one of the issues that keeps coming up is basically about land. My first advice is this. Whenever you want to buy a piece of land, whether this is within the specific context of Liberian situation or anywhere else, please make sure that you engage the services of a lawyer, someone who has the skills, the expertise to look at title instruments and advise you whether or not to invest your money into that property. The reason is simple. You who do not have the training, the skills, might not know that, though this property may be in this person's name, yet the person has no authority to sell it. How will you know that? If you are not trained to know these kinds of things, how will you know it? Now, if, for example, someone has a property that he or she is managing in the interest of an estate or on behalf of an estate, how will you know whether this person has authority to sell that property or not? Now, when you see letters of administration, those letters may not be adequate to qualify this person to sell. How about the person having a deed, but the person who may have given the property to the person in their will or whatever other instrument has said that this property should be used by this person only for their lifetime, and after him or her, they have son or daughter. So if you went there, you saw the property in a person's name, and you gave them money and they issue a deed, they are not able legally to pass that property on to you. So these are technical issues that a lawyer trained to understand this issue might be able to advise you whether or not to put your money into those kinds of activities. But if you don't do that, and you go like what a brother said a few minutes ago, or the Cooper family, one of the brother has it. How do you know that? Those are the kind of issues that the Supreme Court will examine and then say, unless you bought the property from this person and not that person, your purchase is not good. So, lastly, Liberia is on the forward movement, but it needs the contribution of all of its citizens. And I want to urge you and encourage you to keep engaging our public policy makers so that together we can continue this movement and make Liberia what it ought to be. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Councillor Jan-neh. We appreciate your time, and we also want to thank each and every one of you who show up tonight to listen to Councillor Jan-neh. We want to thank Brother Mohammed Kromah, former VPA for FEMUSA, and now the Administrative Manager for Liberian Water and Sewer Corporation, along with the current leadership of FEMUSA, for giving us the opportunity to host Councillor Jan-neh. With that said, we will call it a night. So have a blessed night.
Thank you.
Capitan District in the studio tonight to tell you people for where were you people in the district as a money inspector in the district. But I would let you people know tonight my father